I say science is going to allow us to live longer, they seem to think that I'm trying to say that we should become immortal. That's not what I'm saying.
Who will be the people that have extended life, better access to better medicine? Will it be democratized, or will it just be a few people?
Even if AI progress would stop 100% completely today, then still, with the knowledge we already have, we will be able to have incredible breakthroughs that will be mind-bending over the next 10 years.
With the technology that we have already, and it's evolving very quickly, we can create any, let's call it an alternative reality that you would like to participate in.
I maintain that technology is the most deflationary power we know.
Welcome to a new episode of the Innovation Network newsletter, where Aragon and I discuss everything that's happened in the past 2 weeks and try to make sense of all the innovations, all the exponential technology, and how to make sense of all that. So, good morning, Wayne.
I thought we were just trying to make sense of our lives.
We are trying to make sense. We just had a chat about Brian Johnson, who doesn't know him, right? The Don't Die guy. And well, actually maybe a better name for him is Benjamin Button, right? He's trying to reverse aging. And I was watching a piece of his Netflix documentary, and it looks like he doesn't have any fun. So what's the purpose of getting old if you're not having fun, right? So
yeah, that's the relevant question here. Like, why are you trying to live longer? People often tell me, "Oh, I don't need to live forever," and because they always seem to think that when I say, "Well, science is going to allow us to live longer," they seem to think that I'm trying to say that we should become immortal, and I'm sure some people would like that, but that's not what I'm saying, and I don't think we're there yet. But I don't understand Brian Johnson, who basically gives up everything in his life just so he can live longer. But then again, we can't see his personal life, right? Apparently, I mean, he goes running with his sons. Maybe he takes great pleasure in those things, being that fit.
That's
so there's always that argument to be made. But the point I like to make to people when they say, "Well, why do humans need to get older?" I'm like, why not? Like, why is a Greenland shark allowed to live 400 years under the ice, but not me?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, in this documentary, he makes a great point that I know that you make, and I do the same in the keynotes as well. So people have difficulties accepting that they're going to be 150 and 200. But if you ask them the questions, do you want to live longer, healthier, or do you want to be better tomorrow than you are today? The answer is always yes. So if you extend that to this logical conclusion, you want to get better every day, and that will go on for a long time as long as you're healthy, right? So why not?
100%. Oh man, we can let's not go completely off the rails at the start, because we did have some things planned for the opening, but this is a very interesting topic. So I don't know, did you hear about what happened in China? Because we spoke about it this weekend. We had a time traveler thing here at my place. We spoke about it at length. Do you know what the Chinese did?
No, because I don't know what you're referring to. The Chinese are doing a lot of things.
The macaques. So they did so we've spoken very often on longevity. I think longevity is another technological development, medical development that is, or space that's very important. Now, we spoke in this podcast newsletter about David Sinclair and his research into aging. We spoke about how they took mice and then they reversed the aging of mice, but there were complications, but they were making a lot of headway. That was the last year. And so my expectation was that over the next decade, and I mentioned this in my keynote, and I think you even mentioned it in the book, I'm not 100% sure now, but that we're going to see very significant breakthroughs as a result of AI progress that's already been made but not being translated yet into tangible results that will allow people to live longer. OpenAI has just started a collaboration to extend the human healthy lifespan by at least 10 years, and there's a lot going on. But that we thought this was going to be this decade. 2 weeks ago, the Chinese put out a paper which and proof that they took macaque monkeys. So we're not talking about mice anymore. We're not talking about amoebas or yeast. We're talking about macaque monkeys. That's like significant, much higher up the evolutionary chain, much closer to humans. And they reversed their aging. So they took old macaques and they made them young again.
And with what percentage? There's any number on it?
I can't give an exact number. Basically, they took a whole bunch of markers, and maybe we can link something in the newsletter so people can check it out. But they took a whole bunch of markers, and basically they proved that they returned those markers from the markers of an aging monkey who is like in his 70s or 80s to human compared aging back to being in their 20s. So tissue samples, neuroplasticity, physical energy, fitness, that kind of thing.
Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind that this is coming on quickly. And it will take a long time before we see those effects, right? Because if we will get younger or age slower, so it will take to the next century before we actually see, hey, Aragon actually became 150, right? It will take some time before you're 150 years.
Yes and no, because this is the thing. What I was thinking, if we are doing this with monkeys now, then my timeline of 10 years might be, it's definitely far more realistic than people would have probably accepted. Even David Sinclair himself expressed complete bafflement, and he was the guy writing the book on lifespan, and why death is just a disease. And this means that in 5 years from now, or maybe 10 at the most, it will be very likely that you and me can just get some kind of treatment that will reverse our aging. So you're saying it will take into another 50 years? No. In 15 years from now, you and me might already be in a younger body.
And how much younger then? Because now you're 43. So let's say that kicks in 5 years and you go back to 38. Then you don't really see the difference. You have to go all the way back to 25 to really see that you're in a younger body, right?
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, if we're talking about gray hairs, but if we're talking about, what is my physical fitness, my neuroplasticity. I mean, there's a lot of, at the very least, there's a lot of like physiological markers we can check that will then confirm that so that doesn't mean we have to wait 50 years to see this. Right? If in 15 years I still look like I do today, and I still have the physical fitness that I have today, then that is already a massive.
No, you're right. But getting back to Brian Johnson, then they have measured his biological age, right? And he is I don't know the exact numbers, but he's 49, and then he measured him, and in his biological age is 44, and that's of course fantastic. But that doesn't really radiate. Without the narrative, I wouldn't tell that, right? I just see a guy. So and then on
of course,
full demographic, that more people that we measure the average lifespan and see the effect of the average lifespan in a graph on a global scale, that will take hundreds of years, right?
Fair enough. Yeah. Now it is kind of sad for Brian Johnson because he's spending millions and millions and millions on this. He's taking like all this stuff every day, living this disciplined life. I did stop drinking alcohol 7 weeks ago now or something, and that's great. But imagine that 15 years from now, we just take one pill and we get exactly the same result as Brian Johnson after fucking 30 years of spending a few million a year.
That's the price of an early adopter, right? That's always the group of people that get penalized for their first steps. Yeah, that's how it is.
But talking about health and mental health is just as important as physical health. You want to tell everybody what you've been doing this weekend?
Yeah, sure. We did a digital detox weekend, and this was an idea actually coming from the kids a year ago. We did it one time earlier this year, and it was such a success that we repeated it. And we have now made an agreement within the family to do it every quarter. The way that we do it is we pack our laptops, we take our phones, and also the remote controls. Every digital device is going in one sealed bag on the Friday evening, and it doesn't come out until the Monday. And that's just 2 days without phones or television or anything. And I don't know about other people's, but the impact is huge. The impact is huge. It starts with noticing how many times you are reaching for a digital device to kind of fill empty spaces during the day, moments that you're just waiting a second, literally going to the bathroom without a phone. I don't do that, right? So you miss your phone on these occasions, waiting somewhere, you miss your phone, and then for some reason the clutter, the noise that you have during the day. It's like a ventilator is kind of suddenly stopping, and you notice, wow, that was present all the time, and then it's gone, and you have more space to think, and it allows you to come up with more new creative things, like meditation. It feels a lot like meditation, and actually, I couldn't recommend it enough to do this. It's
nice,
so much fun.
I hate to admit it. Well, I hate to admit it's not the right phrasing. From someone who's so absorbed in a lifestyle with technology, there's a part of me that kind of rejects it outright. And then there's another part of me that remembers very fondly my youth in the 90s, living outside in the Dutch Uiterwaarde, which is the closest we get to being out in nature in the Netherlands, I guess. And being out all day, no phones, just being in my tree house or going swimming or running around the fields, horse riding, whatever, shooting bow and arrow. And I remember how amazing that was. And in fact, whenever I'm under stress, I tend to visualize those memories and go back in time and travel through our garden and the fields and the trees and the forest to kind of to find my center myself. So it's super interesting because when you describe this, I feel like you're actually making a much better active effort to kind of recapture those times where we weren't always consumed by data streams and allowed our brain to kind of, be bored.
Yeah.
We had the Time Travelers dinner this weekend, or a Time Travelers meeting, I should say. I had a few of the friends here, and Rufus made the remark, Rufus Baas, he said, I remember that when I was young, being bored was the most horrible thing, and it took forever. Like an hour would feel like years of doing nothing. Yeah. And we don't know that anymore, right?
Oh, I was actually bored yesterday during the midday somewhere. For 2 hours, I was bored. I cannot remember when I was bored, because I work, but I have so much hobbies, so much things to do. I'm always busy. I do meditation, but I sit down. I'm not bored. I'm deliberately doing nothing. But I was really bored, and I was just floating around a little bit in the house, seeing what I could rearrange. And I ended up doing something with the books in the closet. It's fun to be bored, and to the process of being bored is not fun, but the end of being boring, then you come up with something cool to do. Then it had a purpose. Yeah.
This reminds me, actually, when I was traveling Australia in 2008, 2009. I was traveling alone, and I've always maintained that very often traveling alone, completely alone, is one of the best ways to travel, because you can never, sit back with somebody and then just, that's fine, because you're alone. So and the result is that you're most often never alone, because you are forced to engage with other people. Otherwise, you're alone. You never have to ask somebody else if it's okay to go and do something if somebody else invites you. So things happen. But it's interesting, because I remember so vividly the days in Sydney when I was actually alone, because there was no one to do anything with. I had nowhere to go. I had no responsibilities, and I simply didn't know what to do with the day or with myself. And so I would just wander around the city, because I obviously was sleeping in a hostel, so that was not a great place to stay either. Not exciting. So I would just wander around the city. And the funny thing is that now some of those memories of wandering around the city and taking it all in, just being present in that moment, are some of the most interesting and valuable and coolest memories I have. And usually these memories end in me meeting somebody that I'm still friends with today, and that gave me some of the most remarkable experiences of my life, like meeting Blake and me being at his wedding in the Blue Mountains, in 2017. So crazy.
Yeah, so the net of it for me is the balancing act, because do I want to live completely without digital devices? No, I love what we do. I love what we're talking about. I love all the innovation, all the new stuff. But stepping out of it from the time, and then really stepping out of it, just to have a different perspective of what it all is and what it all does with your body, with your brain, with your thinking, with your resting, it helps me a lot. Yeah.
That brings us to the next topic.
Ooh, what do you have there?
Talking this, of course, for those who follow us and know what we do, this is Patrick's book, Waves of Abundance, in Dutch. I really, really hope that we're going to have an English version of this pretty soon, because there's so many people that also follow us and are in our network that don't speak Dutch yet. But we are going to discuss this today. And you were just talking about your life, detox, simplifying life, and yet you wrote a book.
Yeah.
Which is basically about the future with technology and what it's going to bring us. And I've read most of it. I'm not done yet. I really, it's very painful to admit this, but But I have read a lot of it, and I wrote down a whole bunch of questions. And is there anything you want to say before we get into this?
No, man. Just go. I would love to hear your opinion after you've read it. Maybe this is strange for people, knowing that we work so closely together. And you did read parts of it, but the moment that it was signed and we really start working with
an editor,
then you didn't see it. So there was a big gap before you saw the end result. So curious to hear what you think. And
well. I mean, first of all, before we go into my questions about the book, I would just like to express my absolute awe and respect and appreciation for the fact that you pulled this off, because we've been building Innovation Network now for
2 years,
2.5 years, 3 years, 2.5 years,
something like that.
And from the moment we got together, I told you I want to write a book. And then you said, well, I'm also working on writing a book. And today that book is right here. My book is still, somewhere in between 5 and 6 chapters that I wrote that I don't even line up. Plenty of ideas, plenty of insights, but I haven't been able to muster the discipline and found the capacity to complete this. And I think that gives me a special appreciation. And anybody that's ever tried to write a book will appreciate this. How hard it is.
It is
how hard it is to take a set of insights, ideas, and then translate that into a coherent story for others to read and to enjoy. Yeah. So, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks. That's coming for
Massive-
you. That means a lot.
respect.
That means a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and you look, a lot of people that follow us, they probably have read an article once or twice, or maybe multiple times. But this is on a completely different level. I mean, basically anybody can write an article, because all you need is, you keep your attention on one thing for an hour or two. You put a rant on paper, and
Well, there's a reason that AI still cannot write a complete book.
yeah. So massive kudos. Having said that, like you said, one of the earliest manuscripts for some of the chapters went my way. I read them. The book that we have today is completely different from the initial manuscripts, and in every single way better. But it has been my great honor and privilege to, of course, share ideas with you and to discuss ideas with you. And it's been my absolute pleasure to read the book and then basically see the conversations that we had.
Yeah. I can. Yeah, that must be also fun and a little bit weird, right? We chatted about that. Sometimes when I read something from your side as well, I just hear you say it because we work so closely together. And we discussed, of course, so many of these topics in the books and on the newsletter.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I posted on Instagram this week an article that has now basically even more scientific proof for the fact that if people really become good friends and they spend a lot of time together, their brains start to synchronize. And so there's moments where I read your book, and I'm not afraid to admit this, that I felt a little jealous because it's things that we discuss, and I feel that these are also my ideas, but you wrote the book first.
Yeah.
But then, as soon as I put this feeling of kind of jealousy aside, I realized that, it's really very beautiful, because it also shows how much our brains align, because neither you nor me really know anymore who first came up with things, because there's things in there that I feel they're my ideas, but reading your book, I realized that they're not my ideas. They are literally our ideas. And I have no idea who was the first one to bring it up. And that's how much we have synchronized over the last 2.5 years. And so, yeah, all around, reading this book was actually a pleasure in ways that I cannot describe, because I've read, both of us have read so many books, like Mustafa Suleiman and AI 2041 and go on and on. But reading those books from somebody else and then discussing them is a completely different thing than reading something like this.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Cool.
But something else that you're saying that was interesting to tag on is that we have, of course, a lot of ideas that we discuss, but there's so many ideas out there. And I deliberately, as a writer, take an effort to, once you know that an idea is floating out there, you try to find your own metaphor, a different metaphor, that you don't repeat another metaphor that's been used before. So that also makes the writing hard, because everything you know, and there's not a lot more that you don't know, how do you come up with original metaphors to try to get your message across? So even when trying to kind of be as original as you can still read through the lines, all the ideas that below it that we've discussed so many times, right?
Well, there as well, I think you've done a tremendous job, because there's many things in your book that I remember some of them, definitely not all of them, but some of them have been brought up by you in conversations. And honestly, at the time, I just didn't fully grasp them. I didn't really feel the metaphor. Not like I kind of did, but not really. And then we'd move on. But then reading your book, they really brought a completely new kind of perspective or way of explaining something to life for me. And there's several I've marked a lot. Well, maybe not right here, but I have done a lot. Yeah, here you can see it. I've been marking stuff in your book all over the place. And I even ordered 1,700 page markers to go through it again, because there's a lot of stuff in
1,700 page markers.
I could be, well, you can never have enough. But I was like, maybe I can use this in the future. However, I have some, to kind of make sense of the book for those that have not read it yet and maybe are considering reading it but want to know more about it. I wrote down a bunch of questions. I don't know how far we'll get, but I'd like to ask you to see if you can give me some insights. So one of the main things in the book is that you describe kind of three periods, which are also three kind of mechanics, in a way, for evolution and transmission. I didn't want to give away too much, because I would love to hear you speak more about that and why you picked these and why you think they're so relevant. I hope you understand what I'm talking about.
I think I do. And I think maybe this is the part of the book that maybe the most is co-shared with you, because we have done so many presentations together. Well, actually, you often did the presentation and I have another part, and we talk a lot about, you are a future historian, right? So, and the fact that you should look at what happens today from an historical perspective is so important. And this is maybe a tagline that comes back. Everybody, including myself, keeps on forgetting the nature of exponential growth. So showing it in 3 different periods of different growth is very relevant. So the period of, let's say, where nature just evolved over a period of 4.5 billion years, super slow. We cannot even imagine how long that has been till there was some certain point, and it's up for debate where it is. It doesn't really matter if that's 10,000 years or 20,000 years ago. Humans really started to make a difference. So we had 300 years, Homo sapiens, of course, but then we started to create cities that in a period of 10,000 years, we really kind of become the dominant species on the planet. And then in this final fragment, that's the third piece, we finally have the technology that is taking over, which leads to AI that is can basically code itself, change history itself, and puts us on an exponential curve that we really see. And that's what those 3 cheap chapters are basically about.
Yeah, and what really I found most incredible there, and that actually gave me completely, well, at least it made me aware of something that I hadn't been conscious of before, was you talk about, evolution, biological evolution through DNA, and then you talk about memetic evolution, which is something that is singularly brought into existence by humanity. Because it's, well, at least, I mean, well, maybe you basically say, well, this is culture, right? The dissemination of ideas. And ideas are another form of transmission. So DNA transmits information across generations, but ideas transmit information, much, much faster within generations. And I thought that it was very clever that you pointed this specifically out. I didn't consciously look at it like that. And I thought that's so important because, yes, information dissemination is important, but it is also the dissemination of culture and of mind frames. Like the scientific method is a way of dealing with information.
Yeah, it's very interesting because genes, to transfer a gene to my son, that takes a generational time frame, right? But a meme is something, and it has the same characteristics as a gene. It is a replicator of information. And once you have a good description of an idea, I can basically tell it to you, and it sticks and it's right. Then it can easily blown over the planet. And that is, of course, the big change that we saw in the past 12,000 years, which now is even, we have new replicators. We have the replicators that AI can generate, and even without human intervention, can spread replication of ideas even faster.
And interestingly enough, that brought to me many times the idea of a virus. Now, virus has a negative connotation, but if you look at human genetics, there's a large part of our genetics that we have identified as remnants of viruses. Yeah. So viruses are actually an important part of transmitting DNA. And then in memetic transmission, the same thing goes again. A memetic, an idea or a concept goes viral, right? And then it spreads, and then it infects people. And then they get that, and that then creates a new, fundamental basis, just like DNA. And then again with AI, in a real way, we're seeing the same thing. Because AI is being built on memetically transferred, created information of humans. And therefore, again, it holds within it still the remnants that it then spreads around further. So that's, all of that was, anyway, I thought it was super interesting and really worth looking at. Now, later on in the book, this is another thing I'm super interested about. You talk about intelligence and creativity and their relationship. And I'm super curious if you can tell me a little bit more about how you see that. Are creativity and intelligence linked inevitably? And does growing intelligence always lead to growing creativity? And what does that mean for artificial intelligence? Or how do you look at that exactly?
Yeah. I think they are linked, right? So if you take creativity being the act of creating something that didn't exist before, or even if you mix something, if you are unintelligible, you can still create something, but it is most likely by accident that you have mixed a couple of components together and then you've created something. If you are intelligent and can think of the design of the mechanisms behind that, and you have an extensive view of how the world is built up and works, then you are more able to kind of take these components and meaningfully try them out. And in the book, I have an example, for instance, from David Bowie, which is an artist I really like. My son is called Bowie. I even have a tattoo of Bowie on my arm. Everything that I see from him, if you see a video of him explaining how he is thinking about the music, what he wants to express and give to the world, you see that it's an intelligent person. And I see that from many creators that are actually highly intelligent. So there must be a link between the two. Yeah.
You speak of polyphores or polymaths, I think.
Yeah, the Dutch polymaths. Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of tend to agree with you, right? Because if we look at the greatest pieces of art in history, they were always created by exceptional people, right?
Yeah.
Bach, Mozart, Van Gogh, Michelangelo, they were highly intelligent people. They are probably most famous for the art that they created, but across the board, you can always, I mean, Leonardo da Vinci is of course the archetype of this. He was an intellectual. He was developing flying machines, trying to figure out how nature worked, and at the same time, he created incredible pieces of art. So there seems to be this inevitable link between intelligence and the capability, as you explain intelligence in the book very well, based on the two different words, inter and legere. And you say, well, it's about the finding of patterns and then analyzing them and realizing their interactions and complexities, and then being able to kind of take them apart and then put them back together in a different form or shape.
Yeah, correct.
Yes,
yeah, correct.
So the higher your capacity for understanding complexity, the higher your capacity for recreating complexity.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
So,
but that would also mean then that our intelligence is limited, or our creativity is limited by our intelligence.
Yes, but I think then there's another component coming to the mix, because if you loop it back to me like that, I think that the fact that you curate out of the different patterns what you consider to be new, meaningful, helpful, or even art that has a meaning in the world. So what we don't see from these artists like Michelangelo or David Bowie are all the tryouts or paintings that they have created and have not shown, right? They made like hundreds of pictures, and the one that is the best is what we see. And that ability within AI is something that I do not yet see yet. AI is creating a lot of things, and we curate there out of that what we like and say, hey, this is a nice way of putting words together, or a nice way of framing it, and then we select it. So there is another conscious component to that, I think.
Okay. I find this, we could talk about this for a long time, because you in your book, you talk about how we're moving on to the curation rather than moving from creation to curation. And I find that very interesting, because that then would, to me, imply that we are very much at risk of becoming less intelligent, because we're no longer actively partaking in the creation and partaking in the creation, like you just said. David Bowie, Michelangelo, whoever, they did it. Like even Michael Jordan, made 1,000 shots, every time being creative and working and refining his skill to finally, make the perfect ones. And
I think there is a risk indeed, because if you are a poet and you discover ChatGPT and you see ChatGPT can rhyme, and you let ChatGPT rhyme everything for you, you just curate, I think your capacity and maybe also intellectual capacity to rhyme will over time diminish.
Well, we could talk for hours, but on to my next question, and this might be a simple one. Is there something like artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so I think I know where you're heading. So we have, of course...
I don't know where I'm heading. It's about where you...
Yeah.
So, how you think about it.
Yeah, there are words, right? So is there a divide between nature and technology? It depends on how you look at it, right? We definitely have the two words for it, right? So you have something that we consider to be nature, and if we create it artificially, it's artificial, but we've created it as well. So basically, it's not an artificial anymore. Intelligence, it is intelligence.
Yeah. So it was a close question. So it was a little bit of a trick question for me, but that's how I feel about it. I think that the whole term artificial intelligence is absolutely misplaced. And the funny thing is, and I think we agree on this because we discussed it before, is that as AI, I posted yesterday on Instagram that now AI has deciphered sperm whale communication, and there's actually an alphabet in there, which is crazy, a phonetic alphabet. So they actually, this is crazy shit. So these sperm whales, they're definitely communicating very intelligently. But their intelligence might be, and we discussed this weekend as well, what is the intelligence of an octopus that only lives 7 months or something?
Yeah, and you have different types of intelligence as well. You have musical intelligence or spatial intelligence. There's different types of intelligence as well. So you can categorize the stuff, but overall intelligence is the ability to solve problems, which can,
Yeah. Cool. So you wrote in the book AI is underhyped, and you've repeated this on the podcast with Martijn Vinke, Future Radio, or radio program, I should say. Why? Why is that?
I hate this fact that if people kind of disregard this, and I once had a meeting where a CIO said, well, this whole AI thing is gonna blow over, right? I've seen SaaS, I've seen the internet. It will not have such a big impact. It's a message for those people. It's not overhyped. It's underhyped. The impact on life is, and of course this is why we do the innovation network and everything around it. This is the most important thing to make people aware of the impact of AI, and you cannot overstate the impact. So it's by definition underhyped.
Yeah. So in your book, you go over some great examples, and I would highly recommend anybody to read the book, of course, for those. But I think that one of the most interesting ones, of course, is that we've discovered 200 million new proteins known to nature through AI.
Right.
That's 1 billion years of PhD work, and I've repeated this 100 times because Demis Hassabis from Google DeepMind, of course, said this the first time about a year and a half ago. But those proteins have not been worked well. There are a few medicines now. There's like a cancer vaccine in the NHS. I think that's been made in part due to that. But the vast majority, let's say 99% of new medications based on these proteins aren't even available out yet. They're not even finished yet, right? So even if AI progress would stop 100% completely today, like in the three-body problem, alien species would stop our progress, then still, with the knowledge we already have, we will be able to have incredible breakthroughs that will be mind-bending over the next 10 years. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And that's why it's so on high, I think.
Absolutely. And people getting used to the speed of today. But if you go back to the timeline that we just discussed, like this is all happening in just a tiny fraction of existence, in just a couple of decades. This type of change and this type of understanding of the fabric of how everything is built, how we are built, and how we, in the beginning of the conversation, how we can potentially age backwards. That's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about potentially eternal life. Well, how can you overhype that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of leads me to my next question. In your book, you speak about several waves. Yeah. Important waves, different waves. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the three main waves that you speak of are intelligence. Yeah. Then followed by machines, and we've often covered robotics, etc., of course, on this channel. And then finally, you talk about the metaverse. And I thought it was a super interesting choice of these specific three. And I was hoping you could give a little bit more insight for
I actually was hoping you would take me to that direction, having a discussion about the metaverse with Mr. Metaverse himself. So there we go. There's a couple of ways to discuss this. We often get the question, what would people do if everything is automated, right? What can you then do? Of course, you can have digital detox weekends. You can go out, you go into nature. But with the technology that we have now already, and it's evolving very quickly, we can create any, let's call it an alternative reality that you would like to participate in, right? So there are games at the moment that are 200 plus hours, but the moment that AI is able to keep on generating endless worlds, endless creations, endless characters, endless storylines, it's up for you to decide how many hours you want to participate in something. So if you don't have to work, the idea of living in a virtual world is at your disposal. That is one of the options and promises of the metaverse. And what I do emphasize, I think this story is also in the book, is that this is already existing around us, right? If you take, for instance, just Minecraft, and Minecraft has about, 250 active users monthly.
Million.
A million. So 250 million average users. You have a square kilometer of something like that you play in. So only in that game, the surface ground that everybody on the world is playing is equal to the total surface that we have on the entire Earth. And that is just one game existing already. So I think that something that looked dystopian, like in the movie The Matrix, is actually a very, a possible reality in the short term, because AI can generate whatever entertainment or 3D world we like. Yeah. And while I'll say this, maybe I should emphasize, because for you not, but for most of the people, this is the moment where they choke. They go like Matrix, 3D world, leaving this is scary, right? And that's why I'm emphasizing most of these things are already there, because if you come back from home and you have dinner and then you go sit on the couch and you watch Netflix the entire evening till you then, that's a large portion of your free time that you already consume in a 2D version, right? That same Netflix story is also about to be completely AI generated. So everybody is basically connected to an interface that has a continuous stream of information, which I all put under the umbrella of Metaverse.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, look, that part of your book I particularly loved, because people always ask me lately, like, hey, Mr. Metaverse, do you still talk about the Metaverse? Is the Metaverse dead? What's
you're ahead of the
AI and
curve there.
Metaverse?
That is deliberately the third wave that we then gonna end up with the first two waves are gonna play out completely.
Yeah, and I really love how in the book you kind of make that relationship clear, because a lot of people don't see the relationship between AI and the metaverse. But it is generative AI. So first of all, we're moving towards generating reality. Thus, we're generating virtual reality. Thus, we're generating the metaverse in every possible way, from the characters, from the environments, from everything. So that's very important. But secondly, coming back to your Minecraft, it's actually funny because your book made me dive back into some stuff that I hadn't really looked at much for 2 years. Right, from back when I was really talking about the metaverse a lot. And back in my initial presentation, I talked about Minecraft. And back then, Minecraft was quite far behind on Roblox. So Roblox had hundreds of millions of users already, or at that time, I think it was 80 million users a day. And Minecraft had a lot less, like 10 million maybe. But due to your book, I realized that Minecraft, and nobody's talking about this, but Minecraft has only grown. And very rapidly. Like Minecraft is now 225 million. You said 250 with 225. Roblox is 250 to 380 million a month. And daily they're 55 and 69. That's crazy. Now,
and not only what I can tell is that also Roblox was very promising on AI features, which they have not doubled down on lately. All the new developments that I see in Roblox are done via interfaces that people code things in Claude that then appear in Roblox, not a native AI within Roblox. And within Minecraft, the innovations keep on piling on each other. So
and people don't really think about this, because Microsoft is developing Copilot. Copilot is now being integrated in Windows. Windows is about to release Copilot Gaming, which is basically AI built into Windows, which then is active during your gaming, which helps you play games. What is going to be the first game that Microsoft is going to add this to natively? Minecraft. So you will be in Minecraft with an AI assistant, and that is just mind-blowing to see where that is going.
And while we're talking, there's another component that's very important that we haven't touched upon yet, is the generational effect.
That's exactly
here.
where I wanted to go. Go on.
It is so natural for my son to play with Minecraft as it was for me to play with Lego. So the fact that he lives in that 3D environment is normal for him. And people from my age tend to forget that and see that as strange. But a thing like Metaverse that we consider scary, people from my age usually, is for kids, it is so super. That is something that also cannot be overhyped.
And this is, I'm getting the chills from this. Like I'm literally getting, because when I do my keynote, and you know this, for 2 years I have this intro where I talk about how in the future we will be wearing AR glasses and so much of our life is virtualized. And this is still something that a lot of people really struggle with, because many people of our generation or a little older, they're like, why would I want a virtual photo on the wall or not a real, thing in my house? It's a concept that they can't fully grasp because it's so far from their reality. But like you said, your son is like, basically your son replaced Lego with Minecraft. So he basically already virtualized Lego blocks that we played with physically, and he made them virtual in a virtual world. And now, because he doesn't have augmented reality glasses yet, he's doing that on a computer or a PlayStation or whatever. But the point is very clear. We can see this transition is already happening. And at some point when these people are grown, right, your son is grown, why would he won't make a meaningful distinction between a physical Lego or Minecraft. So if he moves to AR, it's just going to be more practical, because then he can basically have the same kind of experience without actually leaving the reality that we live in together. And it's going to blend more and more together.
And if that reality makes you happy and gives you a fulfilling life, my argument is why not?
Yes, and this brings me then to a wonderful next question. What a great synchronization of minds we have. You speak of the illusion of the real, is the title of one of the smaller subtopics, and you discuss, virtual reality versus real reality. But I would like to know, is there any real distinction? I mean, we both read David Chalmers' Reality Plus. We read Nick Bostrom's Simulation Theory. Is there a real distinction to be made? How do you look at this?
Yeah, so this is super fascinating. I feel there is a distinction to be made from the outside in, but purely because I'm from this generation, right? So I know this and this physical world, and I can make this distinction of physical world and a virtual world. But if you do the exercise and put me 100% completely in a virtual world without any signals to distinguish it from the real world, how would you be able to tell the difference? Then that is your real world, right? So as long as the simulation theory is towards perfection, it doesn't really matter. So from that perspective, no.
And if you can't tell the difference, does it matter? Because in my world, when I go to a rave, I'm living a different reality than when I'm at home on a Sunday.
Certain turn of events. No, it doesn't matter. No, I don't think it. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. No.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I think we should probably cut it off there because we've ended into a completely philosophical debate that lasts for hours on this one, because I love that, and I'm looking at the time.
Yeah, but do you have something in mind that you want to go to? Because the perspectives on this.
I think you answered the question. I mean, I think that, and this is the thing. I'm trying to interview you, but we both, of course, agree that all reality is reality. Right?
Yeah.
And we're still living in an age where there's seems to be a clear distinction between a virtual reality and the physical reality, because we cannot escape the physical reality we live in. If I don't make money in the physical reality to pay my bills, I won't be able to enjoy like a virtual reality like in Borderlands. But that doesn't make my Borderlands reality any less real. Right. But that's a philosophical debate. And not everybody will even understand that if you just put it out there so simply like this. That's the reason there's so many books, or there's some really great but complicated books written on it by, for example, Nick Bostrom on simulation theory and David Chalmers and others. Yeah, we can talk about that for hours. So I have two final questions about your book.
Yeah.
This might be the most relevant and important one for anybody listening or reading the book. Near the end of the book, or towards somewhere in the second part, you talk about systems. And I would like to pose to you the question, which of the systems of the world that we live in today do you think will be most affected by the things we just discussed? These three different waves, the rise of intelligence, machines, and the metaverse, the fact that we are now in the AI-driven evolution, and what does that mean for our near future?
Okay, I'm just going to talk, and then maybe I'll go back to my selection, which is the most important one. The one that first comes to mind is the economic system. The most important message that I want to cross about systems is that I'd like people to see the possibility that we humans are not on the top of the food chain, but are part of a bigger system as well. And we are part of more systems. And you could argue, how much influence do you have on your free will within a system? And the best way, and I talk about it in the book as well, is, for instance, to look at the effect or decision-making power that you have as you are working as an employee in a company. A company is a bigger system. You are part of a company, and how much leverage do you really have? Extrapolate that, because companies are in a nation, in a global economy, that is a system on its own. So how you are really a very tiny portion of that. You're the same small portion to the economy as that a single cell is in your body that makes up your entire human being and your thinking and your brain. And that is about to change. All the economic rules are about to change if we move to a world of abundance, if we move to a world of overvloed, golven van overvloed, where we can produce anything for very low cost, basically.
Yeah.
And why I was a little bit hesitant to call economics out, that is the most obvious one in front of us. But taking it back to the metaverse, what we consider to be reality is also a system of thinking. It's an ideology that we have created, which can also change, which is shattering our worldview, which is what we already see with people who are religions that see their worldview being shattered from a certain perspective. And that's a hard one to take, right? And it also goes fast. So all these type of systems have emergent behavior that we think we can control. and we try to control as human beings. We talk about that we have the influence, but I don't think we have that.
Okay, yeah. There's so many things I would like to say to that, but cool, thank you. My final question. At the end of the book, you talk about and what's the translation for this word? Samentrekkende kracht. The power that pulls all together.
Yeah.
Let's
The
translate it this
Polarization
way.
Paradox.
Yeah. There's probably a really great English word for this, like the blah 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 force.
Yeah.
The connecting force, or the combining force, or the gravity. I don't know. Tell me more.
Yeah. Okay. This is very interesting. While I was writing the book, while everything that I've done with innovation, everything that I've done with technology, and I still have not made up my mind. This is going back and forth. Is technology something that brings people together, or is it something that ultimately pulls people apart? And from day to day, I have a different opinion on that. So I thought, well, why don't I write it like that in the book and let people make a decision for it, and come with some examples where you see technology putting people together. And there are many of these things, right? So we used to live in different tribes. Now we all have access to the same knowledge via the same devices. It's all standardized in the same way. That is really pulling people together. Never in history had people that same democratic access to information, right? That really pulls people together. On the other side, we see that, and cutting back to the realities, people can live in sub-realities. That is the downside of that metaverse. And if I do not respect your sub-reality and you do not respect mine, it's very easy to get a polarization and do not understand each other. From that perspective, it could easily push people from each other. At this moment, the power of creating everything around AI innovation is in the hand of a few people that are very powerful. Who will be, to get back to the beginning of our conversation, who will be the people that have extended life, better access to better medicine? Will it be democratized, or will it just be a few people? Those type of questions is fascinates me, and I don't have the answers, but that's why I've written them in the Polarization Paradox. Is it going to put us together in utopia or not?
Yeah, absolutely fascinating question. So I'll say this, because I was reading it and I think about this a lot as well. And I maintain that technology is the most deflationary power we know. And if you look throughout history, penicillin was invented and it was pretty much made available to hundreds of thousands, millions of people really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, the dissemination speed was slower than it would have been today. But COVID, let's put apart for a second how we feel about it and whether it was done correctly and whether the vaccines did everything they promised. We developed a vaccine, and within no time it was made available to billions, right?
Yeah.
If it had been a really perfect vaccine, we would be incredibly grateful. So we might be able to improve the process there, checks and balances, whatever, but it was created very rapidly and it was made available to everybody. Is your smartphone significantly worse than Peter Thiel's or Elon Musk's or Jeff Bezos? No. So it is my belief that, outside of some really dystopic scenarios, it is almost impossible for modern technology to not be really quickly available to everybody. The only reason it can be is if there is very active measures being taken to avoid that. If pharmaceutical companies on purpose make medicine, unaffordable, which is something that's happening in America, but not so much in the EU, for example. So, go on. I was going to say, I love that you finished on that note.
I like, when I'm in a positive mood, I think along those lines, right? And if I think further because those are great examples in the past that indeed we have shared technology. But what is the super strong fundamental argument that we keep on doing that? That isn't someone or a nation or a group of people that becomes super high tech and does not share with other groups of people. That is what, and I don't find is the only thing that we can fare on the goodness of man. Is that?
I think, well, personally, I believe it's just not attainable. I mean, if you look throughout history, you see that whenever that has been attempted, and the most relevant and colorful, visceral example of that is the French Revolution. The French Revolution was a direct result of the French aristocracy completely losing touch with the commoners and increasingly seeing them only as livestock to be exploited. And as a result, the people rose up and overthrew their government, or overthrew their aristocracy, and made a new start for Europe. And the same happened in the United States. And I think that the same thing will keep happening and again and again. And then some people will say, yeah, but what if Elon Musk has an army of 100 million robots? How would we fight that? Well, I'm not saying that it's going to be pretty if that would happen to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But if it would happen, yeah, there would be a fight and it could be bloody. But the thing is that there's no way you cannot convince me that humans would just let that happen. I don't believe that. No. People will rise up. People will resist. And whenever a system includes humans, and this is an important thing to realize, it is never perfect. And because it is never perfect, it is always fragile and it can always be broken. So there is no way that an elite can rise up and then take control and enslave humanity without there being any way of us setting up resistance. I just don't.
I agree, but just for the sake of the discussion, you also have, for instance, this is also captured in the thinking of Karl Marx, of course. You always have upper class, lower class, and that they will revolt at some point, and that mechanism will keep on going. But if you're able to entertain the lower class or middle class in a way, maybe with a fake reality or just enough not to let them revolt, some group of people.
But with what goal? We just discussed, you and me both foresee a future in which you can live in a metaverse. You can basically become a god of your own shared or not realities. We will live in a world of abundance, waves of abundance. Like, what would be the motivating factors for somebody to want to do that? Because if we look as a historian, I can tell you that historically speaking, the biggest motivators for people to show this kind of behavior is because they're not happy with the status quo and they want more power or more luxury or more riches compared to other people. And the only reason that exists is because there is scarcity. So not everybody can have it. So those that want to have it most rise up and take advantage of others. But if we're truly going to a world where you can create your own reality and we have abundance, then all of that kind of motivation would completely disappear, I would argue.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Only we have never lived in a world with so much abundance, so we have to see how that plays out, right?
Yeah, that's true. But like this resultaten uit het verleden bieden geen garantie.
Thanks, man. This was fun, and let's continue that also offline more with your feedback and thinking and diving deeper. Yeah, cool.
Then everybody, thanks of course for watching, thanks for reading, thanks for listening. Today we discussed Waves of Abundance, Golf van Overvloed van Patrick Willer. Zijn boek recentelijk uitgegeven, waar ik bijna net zo trots op ben als hij. Of which I am nearly as proud as he is.
That's what you have if the book is written in Dutch, yeah? Then you make some slip.
If that's possible. So if you haven't already and you do read Dutch, go and order it. I can highly recommend it. And thank you for listening, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share, of course, because we need a much bigger audience. We are currently at almost 400. I would love to see that number rise to 4,000 in 12 months from now. So make someone happy. Make sure they start listening or reading our newsletter. Anything else, Patrick?
No, thank you so much, Aragon, for asking these cool questions and spending the time to talk a little bit more about the book. And thanks for watching. See you next time. Keep tuning in.
I'd like to say in the Netherlands,
see you later.
See you later.
Bridging the gap of exponential growth. Patrick and Aragon share the truth. Join our community, let's innovate. With Innovation Network, create a brighter fate.